speaker is Timor-Leste.
Welcome the delegation of Belarus to this session of the UPR and wishes to make the following recommendation. That Belarus abolish death penalty, that Belarus develop a national poverty reduction strategy and budget with a particular focus on children and family in situation of vulnerability. Madam President, following the mass protests that began after the August 2020 election in Belarus, Timor-Leste remained deeply concerned by the allegation of the police brutality towards civilians. Timor-Leste encouraged Belarus to keep taking a step in the promotion and protection of human rights in its territory, such as the repeal of Article 193, one of the Criminal Code, criminalizing the activity of non-registered organization. We wish Belarus all the success during this review. I thank you, Madam President.
Thank you very much. And the next delegation is
Timor-Leste.
Vice President, Timor-Leste welcomed the delegation of Liberia to this session of the UPR and thanks them for the report. As the outset, Timor-Leste would like to make the following recommendation. 1. That Liberia decriminalize same-sex sexual conduct between consenting adults. 2. That Liberia remove any provision in legislation that provided for the death penalty. Mr. Vice President, despite the challenge ahead, Timor-Leste takes note of the positive progress made by the government of Liberia in the field of the freedom of expression and welcome the measure undertaken by Liberia to improve the enjoyment of human rights, such as the proper agenda for prosperity and development and the plan for improving the education sector. We wish Liberia a successful review. I thank you, Mr. Vice President.
Timor-Leste, please.
President, Timor-Leste makes the following recommendation. 1. That Malawi strengthen its effort to protect women and girls with albinism from all forms of the violence and addresses the discrimination, stigmatization, and social exclusion faced by them. 2. That Malawi takes further steps to ensure the sexual offenses and thoroughly and effectively investigated. Madam Vice President, Timor-Leste thanks Malawi for enacting the Legal Education and Legal Practitioner Act, as well as the HIV/AIDS Prevention and Management Act in 2018, which saw the country commitment to improve the promotion of human rights in its territory. Timor-Leste further encouraged Malawi to continue to take a step towards the implementation of all its international human rights obligations, and we wish Malawi a successful review. I thank you, Madam Vice President.
Muchas gracias.
LGBTI persons.
Delegation of Panama and thanks them for their participation in the session of the UPR. Timor-Leste seized this opportunity to make the following recommendation. 1. That Panama take further steps to ensure that all allegations of torture or ill treatment were investigated promptly and impartially. 2. That Panama prohibit through legislative and administrative provision that use of corporal punishment in all settings, namely in school and in child care institution. Madam President, Timor-Leste further takes this opportunity to commend Panama engagement with the UPR mechanism that we note with appreciation the establishment of the National Preventive Mechanism attached to the Ombudsman Office, as well as the adoption of Panama National Plan for the Comprehensive Development of Indigenous People in 2018. We wish Panama all success in all review. I thank you, Madam President.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. Et je donne la parole au...
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon to Ulaanbaatar. We will now proceed with the review of Mongolia. In accordance with Resolution 5/1, the review is based on national report, the compilation of UN information, and the summary of stakeholders' information, both prepared by OHCHR. I now have the honor to give the floor to His Excellency Mr. Basandor Barsuren, State Secretary of the Ministry of Justice and Home Affairs of Mongolia, to introduce the report. Sir, the floor is yours.
Timor-Leste. Thank you, Mr. Vice President. Timor-Leste extends its warm welcome to the distinguished delegation of Mongolia and makes the following recommendation. 1. That Mongolia redouble its effort in combating corruption, including in the judiciary and the civil service. 2, that Mongolia takes further steps to ensure that children with disability are not socially excluded. Mr. Vice President, Mongolia had taken important steps to improve the fulfillment of human rights in its territory, among which Timor-Leste highlights the submission of the draft law on the National Human Rights Commission to the Parliament last year, and the establishment of the Sub-Council to provide guidance in the prevention and control of human trafficking. Timor-Leste encourages Mongolia to continue its effort and wishes them a successful review. I thank you, Mr. Vice President.
Thank you very much. Next speaker is Timor-Leste.
Presentation of the report. In view of the strengthening the human rights situation in the country, Timor-Leste recommends 1. That Andorra establish an independent national human rights institution in accordance with the Paris Principle. 2. That Andorra adopt a national strategy and action plan to combat trafficking in persons. Mr. Vice President, Andorra already adopted several measures taken to promote human rights, and Timor-Leste highlights, in particular, the advancement in the area of access to education of persons with disability. My country also congratulates Andorra for adopting the strategic plan for the implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals and for broadening the mandate of the Ombudsman. Timor-Leste wishes Andorra all success in its engagement with the UPR mechanism. I thank you, Mr. Vice President.
Thank you, Ambassador. Next speaker is Tunisia.
Veo que Timor-Leste está en la sala.
Timor-Leste, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. Timor-Leste wishes to make the following recommendation. 1. That Maldives takes further steps to ensure that all children within its jurisdiction are treated equally. 2. That Maldives abolish the death penalty for all crime. 3. That Maldives expedites the adoption of the maternal and child bills. Madam Vice President, Timor-Leste thanks the Maldives for presenting its national report at the third cycle of the UPR and welcome its achievement of almost universal participation of the children at the pre-primary level and primary, secondary, and lower secondary level. To conclude, Timor-Leste wishes Maldives all the success in its review. I thank you, Madam Vice President.
Muchas gracias.
Timor-Leste.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. Timor-Leste extends its warm welcome to the distinguished delegation of Mongolia and makes the following recommendation. 1. That Mongolia redouble its effort in combating corruption, including in the judiciary and the civil service. 2. That Mongolia takes further steps to ensure that children with disability are not socially excluded. Mr. Vice President, Mongolia had taken important steps to improve the fulfillment of human rights in its territory, among which Timor-Leste highlights the submission of the draft law on the National Human Rights Commission to the Parliament last year, and the establishment of the Sub-Council to provide guidance in the prevention and control of human trafficking. Timor-Leste encourages Mongolia to continue its effort and wishes them a successful review. I thank you, Mr. Vice President.
Thank you very much. Next speaker is
Parola Timor-Leste.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. Timor-Leste welcomes the distinguished delegation of Honduras to this session and wishes to make the following recommendation. First, that Honduras renew the mandate of the mission to support the fight against corruption and impunity. Second, that Honduras takes further steps towards eliminating discrimination based on sexual orientation and gender identity. Mr. Vice President, despite having area of improvement, Timor-Leste note with appreciation effort made by the government of Honduras to strengthen the enjoyment of human rights in its territory. As an example of this, we highlight the creation of the Ministry of Human Rights, the adoption of this public policy against racism and racial discrimination, as well as the strengthening of the Office of the Special Prosecutor for Femicide. To conclude, Timor-Leste wishes Honduras a successful review. I thank you, Mr. Vice President.
Merci.
Timor-Leste.
Thank you, Madam President. Timor-Leste extends warm welcome to the delegation of Bulgaria, headed by Your Excellency Deputy Foreign Minister, and seizes this opportunity to make the following recommendation. First, that Bulgaria redouble its effort to reduce child poverty. Second, that Bulgaria step up its effort to ensure the unlawful use of force by law enforcement officials is investigated. Madam President, the adoption of Anti-Corruption and Forfeiture of Asset Act by the government of Bulgaria in 2018 is worthy of our recognition. Timor-Leste also wishes a comment of Bulgaria for the achieved progress in the child care system, in particular for the institutionalization process. To conclude, Timor-Leste wishes Bulgaria a successful review. I thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Ambassador. Je donne la parole au